start by using the ever-resourceful National Library of Scotland site. Now, on this map dated to the 1950s, the triangle of lines can clearly be seen. The line running from north to south is part of the Transport for Wales line between Wrexham and Bidston and is still very much in use. Initially though, we'll be looking at the northern part of the triangle between the former Birkenhead and Chester Junctions, marked by the big red arrow. Here at the former Birkenhead or D Marsh Junction North, I had a rummage amongst the undergrowth to see what I could find. Amazingly, I came across two discarded main reservoir air pipes. These were used to connect wagons and trucks together, allowing air pressure to be maintained throughout the train in order to operate the braking system. Heading east away from the junction, you can see this short spur of track, and is the only remaining in situ piece of track on the entire route. As the rails disappear, the embankment also ends, as it meets the tarmac of the Chester Greenway, a cycle and footpath laid over the route to Mickle Trafford in 2000. We're now walking along the tarmac of the Greenway, which was laid directly upon the former track bed. Over on our right you can clearly see the tree line, which marks the track bed of the triangle's southern leg between Wrexham and Chester Junctions, which we'll be exploring shortly. As this area was once the bed of the River Dee before it was diverted in the 18th century, the land still retains many marshes and streams. Here the remains of a brick bridge cross one of those streams, where you can clearly see the wetlands on the other side. In the grass is more evidence of the former railway. This is the concrete base of a signal which would have guided trains towards Birkenhead Junction. At this point, the southern arm of the triangle would have joined with the northern arm, just as a footpath does today, although the path to our right doesn't quite align with the track bed. This is the site of the former Chester Junction. We now turn our attention to the southern arm of the triangle, running from Wrexham Junction to Chester Junction. On our map, this is clearly marked once again by the big red arrow. The Chester and Connah's Quay Railway opened in 1890 to both passenger and freight. Passenger services were served by trains running between Chester Northgate and Wrexham and Chester Northgate and New Brighton. Alas, these fell under the shadow of the Beeching Reshaping of Britain's Railways report in 1963, which recommended the withdrawal of all services. Despite this, passenger trains continued to run for another 5 years, with the last services operating on the 9th of September 1968. This wasn't the end for the line, as freight services continued to use the route between the Triangle at the western end and Mickle Trafford in the east. On the 20th of April 1984, these also ceased. However, just 2 years later, on the 31st of August 1986, the line reopened, once again for freight. Now single track and in a particularly poor condition, it continued to be used until 1992, when it was closed for the second and final time. Mothballed for a number of years, the track was eventually cleared to make way for the Greenway, which opened in 2000 as part of the National Cycle Network Route Number 5. As you've probably noticed, this southern arm retains quite a few recognisable relics of its former use. This is likely because it has simply been left since abandonment and not paved over. All along this section there are cable posts which would have held the signal cables away from the ground. Also, underfoot there is still a considerable amount of ballast to be found. Reaching the end of the embankment, we once again approach the site of former Chester Junction and join up with the northern arm, thus completing our exploration of the triangle. Not too far from Sealand I spotted some concrete in the trees to my left. Investigation time, and in I go. Evidently there's quite a bit of concrete and brick construction here, but what could it be? My instinct tells me it is a concrete base to a footbridge. This theory is reinforced by similar structures evident on the opposite side of the trackbed, albeit hidden by dense brambles and almost impossible to get into. However, on scrutinising the maps, there is no evidence of any structure whatsoever in this area, least of all a footbridge crossing the lines. If anyone knows or anyone's got any ideas, please do leave your thoughts in the comments. Once again, prior to reaching Sealand, we arrive upon another interesting piece of history, a short stretch of narrow gauge railway and buffers, possibly something to do with RAF Sealand, which used to be adjacent to the line. This photo was taken a number of years ago. Sadly, the site has been redeveloped for industrial units, and while a fence has been erected next to it, a failed attempt has been made by attaching cables to the rails and simply ripping it from the ground. Unfortunately, the destructive results are evident from this picture. Finally, we arrive at the site of Sealand Station, our journey's end for this first part. Looking into the trees to our right as we head east, there's plenty of evidence of sidings in the form of decaying sleepers and concrete troughing. These sidings once held wagons waiting to enter the RAF base. Originally opened as Welsh Road Halt in June 1918, the station was there solely for the use of military service personnel. Almost a year later, in May 1919, it was opened up for use for the general public. In September 1931, it was renamed to Sealand, although the actual village of Sealand was some 3 miles distant. And on the 9th of September 1968, on the same day of cessation of passenger services, and just 50 years after opening, the station closed. Today, very little remains, as it was demolished shortly after closure, although the sidings remained in use for freight right up until the early 1980s. A few yards further, and approximately the site of the level crossing, in the trees can be found the only remains of Sealand Station. A solitary lamp still stands. I'm pretty certain it's the same lamp indicated by the arrow in the inset picture. Our final explore is to have a wander around the site of the sidings and rail entrance to the former RAF base. Let's see what we can find. Despite being pretty overgrown, although after 40 years it's not to be unexpected, there are plenty of offerings tucked amongst the trees and brambles. Earthworks depict the route a siding once took. Again, rotting sleepers still sit in their original positions, and there are masses of lumps of concrete littered all over the site. Best of all though are the concrete gate posts, which once held the gate blocking the entrance to RAF Sealand, while underfoot sleepers are still in situ.